I was a drug addict. Well, I think it is just a general sense of when you use drugs and you're disconnected, like in general, right, from everything. Because if I drop the ball on my garden, I don't eat tomatoes. But if I drop the ball on our cilantro and we can't make products and we can't sell those products, then we don't pay electricity. It's like my foundation, like what I do on a day-to-day basis coincides with me staying healthy. I would say from the time I've left rehab, I've really had most of my I don't, that's too grand or whatever, but like I've had these experiences that have been life-changing experiences so many times that I feel like I probably would have had prior in my life if I was attuned to what was happening around me, but I just wasn't. We're doing our best to maximize our tiny little yard in order to like grow, veggies, right? This has been a product of a couple of redos.
So this isn't your first look on your garden?
Right, yeah. This
Okay.
is like maybe version 4.
Okay.
Yeah, and originally, so actually the farm started before I knew anything about what it was to be a farmer.
Okay.
So like I was a gardener. I thought I knew about growing organically, and I knew that meant no herbicides and like no pesticides and buy organic fertilizer. And that was like literally everything. I was like, but we also got super interested in our health, both kind of like in transition in life, like career-wise.
And this is you and your partner. She's just not here today.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
me and my fiancé, Chandra.
Okay.
And she's like a huge part of the farm. I'm like more the growing side of stuff. And then she does like all of the culinary awesome stuff.
And she's who I met at the farmer's market first.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. And it's always me or her at the farm stand or at farmer's market.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so, so we kind of were like in transition in so many ways. I was going to school for psychology. And
Interesting.
Yeah, and loved actually as a product of like going through rehab myself. So went through that and was just like, I don't even know what I want to do in my life.
Okay. And when was that?
That was 2019.
So that was just 5 years ago.
Yeah, July 8th of 2020 is when I left rehab the second time. And since then I've been sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really been amazing in all aspects of my life.
Yeah.
But it was cool. I basically didn't know what I liked or what I was interested in.
Yeah. How old were you?
I was 30. Well, I'm 36, so I was 32. Yeah, and I was just like, I had been stoked on gardening in the past. We were together, and I moved in here, and we were like, dude, let's build a big garden.
Yeah.
And so I did like 5-gallon pots. Like
This is after rehab.
after rehab.
Okay.
Pretty much right after rehab.
Okay.
Well,
You were like, I want to grow something.
Yes. Well, I went from rehab to sober living. Okay. And in sober living, I was like, I need to get healthy.
Yeah.
And which is like a really common theme.
Okay.
For, a lot of people coming out of those situations is you've just been in a state of like bad health.
Yeah.
For so long.
Yeah.
And so through that, I had also, at that time, I was like 320 pounds. I had been as high as 375 pounds at another time in my life, and I had lost through not drinking and eating good and exercising. I had actually lost like 175 pounds.
Wow.
Another time. And so I had went from like super duper bad health to really good health. I was like vegan for 2 years and was like doing great, and then started drinking again. Okay. And gained all the weight back, and then went to rehab. Okay. And so that kind of like actually better sets the stage for like the fluctuation that I've experienced, and like why the health aspect is so like super important to me and Chandra.
Would you say that it's a common theme, and you kind of did, that most people's with some form of addiction, one way or another, have a hard time with the other health aspects of their life. So you got into gardening for your health, but do you think that also helped your mental health?
1,000,000,000,000,000%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was so, it was like so holistic. Like the health aspect, for both me and Chandra, we have both had, times where mental health was a huge struggle for us.
Yeah.
And it continues to be for me. Like, I was 4 years ago, I was a drug addict. And so it's like I've been learning and growing and all these different things.
And 4 years isn't a long time
No,
in that world.
not at all. Like,
Yeah.
it's real. Like, I was on food stamps. I was considered homeless, and I was working as a delivery pizza guy at Hungry Howie's part time out of rehab. Like, that was what I did. And
Okay.
and from there to be here, obviously, was a bajillion things happened. Back to the garden thing and
Yeah.
the mental health thing, focusing so much on I was like, I want to feel good about my existence
Yeah.
and my life on this planet, and like that has been kind of my driving force since leaving rehab. And then through doing that, it pointed me to going back to school for psychology, because
Okay.
I was like, I feel like I can help people that were like me.
Which I think is also common.
So common,
Right?
Yeah.
Because when you're in that world, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't want to speak from your own experiences,
Yeah.
but in that world, do you feel isolated? Like no one knows what you're going through, no one understands you, and you wish that there was just someone else?
Yeah, 100%. There is the feeling, and even if you have a good amount of people around you that are also in recovery from whatever the addiction, even if you're doing like group therapy type situations, like, there's all the anonymouses and all those things. Even if you're doing those things, personally, I won't speak for anyone else, but I would say it's a common theme that you feel still pretty separate from like whatever normal people are doing. You still, I felt for a long time hyper conscious of the fact that I was a person in recovery, like in every single thing I did. And I still am in some ways, but it's like my foundation, like what I do on a day-to-day basis coincides with me staying healthy. And so like, but it took...
In all aspects. Healthy in all aspects.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. Mental health, I know me personally, I know I'll always love food, and I'm always gonna, but I also love all food. And so that means I should be eating good food.
Talking about loving food, unfortunately, our highly processed foods that are the easiest to get, especially while on assistance, are meant to make you want more. They're super sweet. They're super fatty. Your
Addictive.
body,
They're addictive.
they're very addictive, especially in addictive personalities.
Yeah. So another common theme, and without, sorry to interrupt.
You're good.
Another common theme is this gets talked about in the world of recovery. You go to rehab, or looking at your health, and you've been struggling to put food in your body. And so you gain weight because all of a sudden you like to eat again. And it's just exactly what you said. In most treatment facilities, in most food pantry situations, the foods that are given out are highly processed, highly sugary, highly salty, and highly addictive. So many people, myself, I will speak again just for me, like one of the biggest problem I deal with as a farmer that spends countless hours a week around beautiful food and around people that care about their food and their health is eating healthy. That is the hardest thing in this world for me to do.
Why?
And it's...
Or because of the addiction, or you mean because of just society?
I mean, for me personally, it's, I think, a combination of things. I think it's because it is an emotional thing for me. After cutting out all these other things, drugs and alcohol, trying to look at my weight, or whatever, it's like, or not even looking at the weight, but like trying to better grow, I guess. it feels like the only thing that I'm like, that it's okay. I don't know. There's like a weird, like when I'm most exhausted, most frustrated, and I'm like, I'm not using drugs, and I'm craving this thing that's bad, and I don't know. And I think for me, the psychology part of it is what really frustrates me. Is like the fact that like I know I have spent so much time trying to educate myself and framework my life around not being tempted or drawn to these other things, these other foods, like not food, bad food, you know? And that the fact that I still know all these fast food, I know where every fast food spot is, like 5 miles down Norman. And I mean like, and that to me, that it calls, like that it owns that space in my mind is frustrating, because I spend so much time talking to people about why you should eat the opposite, and how that food being grown in certain ways matters when you talk about those things. And like I talk about those things ad nauseum, and I love to talk about them, and they're so beneficial. Like all the ways they've benefited my life are countless. Like it's really
It's like life or death for you.
it is so completely life or death. And
Yeah.
I still, like, in my own weird value system ideologies, I made that poor decision on, I ate that bad thing, right? But I know for breakfast I'm gonna have eggs from a farmer that I know, and I have sourdough toast from Wanda, and I have vegetables from my yard, and I could penalize myself for that bad decision and run down a rabbit hole, or I could just like eat the good stuff today and believe that I'm making enough good choices by having these things around me and by participating in this community that I won't be 400 pounds again, right? And each week, each month, it gets easier to not make bad decisions.
Yeah.
And so it's like the framework is working, and it's helped my life, my mental health, my physical health. I'm stronger than I've ever been. I feel healthier. I haven't been to the doctor in years, but I'm gonna go soon, and like I feel like it's gonna be pretty good.
Okay.
And you know, those things, it took time, and as much as I feel those in my day-to-day life, I feel more frustrated by the fact that I'm tempted by these poisonous things. I try not to get too visceral with like talking about, because so much of our farm, so much of what we were doing is like we don't have acreage. You know, we have a house, a 900 square foot house in this neighborhood, and we want to be farmers. So what are the steps that we can do within this framework that we live in to start to become farmers? And so it was like, let's start with what we know, and we can grow some microgreens.
Yeah.
And we can grow tomatoes, eggplants, and peppers.
What was it that made you or changed your mind into growing your own? Because I think anybody could come out of rehab and say, I'm going to eat healthier, and they're going to go find that food.
Yeah.
But why did you say, I want to grow it? Is it just like a constructive thing? Like I need to do something constructive with my hands? Or is there something else that happened?
I love that. And it's so many things. I'm definitely not going to say all of them. I'm going to forget some of them. And
That's
I'm going to
okay.
get hyper-focused on one of them. But it is definitely that. Using my time on something that feels valuable. I knew through gardening in the past that there is a certain level of spirituality that I experience through gardening. Right?
Okay.
And like, it's not, whether it's just like being close to something alive and feeling like, whoa, this is close to like a natural process. And the closer I am to natural things happening, you know, like the ocean and the woods, the more at peace I feel. And so I'm like, and I know I've experienced that through gardening in the past. So I was like, let's garden.
Yeah.
So we had a big, huge garden a couple times, like I say big, huge, it felt big and huge at the time. And like, it was like 400 or 500 5-gallon pots, and it was just all over the yard.
Okay.
And it was fun, and it was amazing, and it like got me comfortable with growing lots of plants.
Yeah.
Just that idea in itself. and just kind of what it took to maintain those and how the things that can occur when you have a whole bunch of something. That was, its own experience. And as I was doing that, I started working at Gateway, is a treatment facility in town.
Okay.
And they had a big, it's like a big one too. It's like 120 people at any given time.
Wow.
There's like the residential facilities where I worked, and there was like a detox. But at the residential facility, there was like a community garden. And there was a woman who was doing like regenerative stuff. Like she was mulching heavily and doing a lot of stuff that I still was like, I don't get what she's doing.
So you had plots, you were working there, and you were looking at her garden at the Gateway place.
At Gateway, yeah.
Okay.
So I was gardening here already. And then working at Gateway, they had the community garden. And I wasn't even really part of that for months after working at Gateway, but she worked there and was like transitioning out of there.
Okay.
And so I saw like what she was doing, but never really got to participate. And then when she left, I got to take over the community garden.
Okay.
Because I had been doing this a little bit more. So people were like, oh, like I was bringing in like tomatoes. And so it was like, oh, you like the garden, so you want to do the garden. And so I did that for maybe not long. It was like 3 or 4 months. But doing the community garden while working there, like I got to work with people in the garden.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is everything. This is amazing.
That's really cool.
And so that was like a huge, not knowing much and feeling like I knew a lot gave me opportunities to talk about the little bit that I knew with people that knew less than me.
Right.
And then just showing up and being opened my eyes to that I didn't know anything, and I got to be around people that knew more. And so it was just the first time that I really got into this world of like, wow, this is more, it's like the growing is awesome, but it's like the sharing, the talking, the experiential part is like the part that sold me.
So you were talking with patients or residents, I should say. You were talking with residents at Gateway about gardening and about food and about health.
Yes.
Were you were at your pots, in your pots here. Were you selling the extras at that point yet, or was that just for yourself?
While I was working at Gateway, not yet.
You weren't selling it?
No.
So is that transition from Gateway where you got to experience talking with people, is that what transitioned you into selling?
So that and realizing that people were excited.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily that you saw the chance to sell the product, you saw the market potential for the people. Not necessarily the food yet.
100%, yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, I felt it was an immediate reaction from all of our neighbors and people that we talked to, that they were like really, really stoked. And it was really exciting for us because there was a lot of questions of like, are people gonna have problems with us growing?
Because this is where
yeah.
we've got your whole plot is full of something. You don't have grass cutting anything around here.
No mowing.
So you now have transitioned from growing in your pot, growing at a rehab facility, helping people with that, to growing more on your property and selling that at farmers markets.
Essentially, there was a moment. So we decided we were going to start trying to do farmers markets, and then I realized I needed to know more about farming.
What did you think that you lacked, if I may ask?
Yeah, I felt generally uncomfortable with the idea of the organization. Like, like I knew about what succession planting was. Like I had done research.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But I had never been on a farm. So,
like a farm, and in the country farm, not a plot in the city.
Right.
Okay.
And further, no, but like even more, I had not been on a plot in a city until I started working for White Harvest Farms, that is now Earth's Farm and Market. That was the first time I ever walked onto a farm, and that was after we started our farm. So
so you started farming before you'd ever been on a farm?
I had never been on a farm.
Wow.
And I've literally never put all those pieces together in quite that way until right now. Like,
what a fun realization.
yes, no, that's amazing. And but yeah, so that's the reality of what we did. As people probably, as that statement would probably point to, we learned a ton rapidly. And through working at Eartha's, I got 2 jobs. So I was an assistant farmer at Eartha's, and I was the garden coordinator at the Claire White Mission. And that job was very cool as well, because it was a small plot. It was like maybe like a 20, it was like a 30 by 25 little plot.
Wow.
And
Okay.
then stuff around the outside of the fence.
Okay.
But that job was about, I got the job for the farm through getting that job simultaneously, because I was working at Gateway. And that job was working with the veterans at the mission. And then getting and doing like a weekly class of sorts. Like, basically you come out into the garden, and we did like a microgreens class, because it was something practical.
Right.
If you have an apartment, you can grow them in your windowsill.
Right,
You could do
right.
it in a cup, whatever. Like, so like we did that. We did like a grow your own herbs. We did a fermented hot sauce class, because it's like easy, like whatever. And so like all those things, and it was a lot of fun. That's really where I had the only reason I got hired, I think, is because I was clearly able to grow some plants, but then I also had the background and was going to school for psychology. I had worked at the rehab, and so that made sense. But it was just amazing, because that's actually what opened the door to get me working on the farm, which is really where I learned the information.
I love this.
Yeah.
The addiction and growing things. Do you see a lot of overlap there that maybe a lot of people don't see?
Absolutely. Yes.
What kind of overlap do you see? I'm curious.
Well, I think it is just a general sense of when you use drugs and you're disconnected, like in general, right? From everything, like, that's not getting more drugs. For me, I would do basically anything, say whatever, do whatever to satisfy the habit. But I mean, the coming out of rehab is another thing that people experience, is like, you feel like you see colors brighter.
Because you've been so dulled?
Because just me, depends on, how long and
Right,
what the situation.
of course.
But there was I started drinking as a 14-year-old, and in high school was getting hammered drunk and going to school. So like, and that never slowed down. And it was like from that until I was 32. And so I have memorable memories, but I have a lot of stuff that's just like, even timelines and things that are messy. I would say from the time I've left rehab, I've really had most of my like I don't that's too grand or whatever, but like I've had these experiences that have been life-changing experiences so many times that I feel like I probably would have had prior in my life if I was attuned to what was happening around me, but I just wasn't. In my experience, if you're either like numbing yourself from something, or you're like, it's like attention-seeking stuff or whatever. But either way, it's like not based in being present, or not based on like feeling things and working them through.
Yeah.
Right? And that is like so much. I feel very lucky, because I've had like decent success growing.
Yeah.
No like full failures, and like I've literally, I mean, we do no pesticides, no herbicides. I don't like to weed, because I feel like there's a reason. And based on all the research, I just was lazy at first. And then now I'm like, oh wow, there's so much awesome purpose for this weed to be here. There's a reason. It feels very fluky that we were able to have success quickly. As far as like, we're trying to grow kale, and we're trying to grow broccoli, and we're trying to grow radishes, and we're able to harvest all those things.
How do you get out here? Okay, there's a day. It's today. Today's disgusting. It's cold. It's gloomy. You think it's gonna rain, but it's probably not gonna rain. So you don't want to come out here and work.
Yep.
How do you get yourself out here? How do you do it?
Absolutely. If we didn't have a farm, I probably wouldn't. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, if I was a home gardener, still, I know myself and my tendencies. And if I think it's not pressing, if I think it's less important for some reason, I won't do it. That was part of the reason we started a farm.
Because you're providing for other people and they count on you.
100%.
Wow.
Is because if I drop the ball on my garden, I don't eat tomatoes. But if I drop the ball on our cilantro and we can't make products and we can't sell those products, then we don't pay electricity. And that is a way to guarantee that I will come out here and make sure I plant trays of cilantro today. And I don't know if I would love to say a dreamier reason, but I have the dreamy side of things for me personally comes from like a lot of interaction, a lot of seeing new things and new epiphanies and patterns in both agriculture, nature, and day-to-day life. I love the way that all these things are very much similar and have systems.
So that's why you do your interplanting.
Yeah.
Like this bed, for example, like this is interplanted and succession planted.
Somewhat, yes. So like, this, and if I was being totally honest with these beds, this actually was a raised bed up until a month ago. So
okay.
There was an additional raised bed like this right out front here, and we had little tiny short beds running up to it. With the plumbing situation and that having to get redone,
yeah.
We just redid the whole thing. So these were already planted, and then but to the succession planting, we had these little guys waiting, and so they were part of another succession, and actually these were seedlings that we were going to sell at market and took to sell to market, but the succession that they're from went out to the plot.
So you love seeing the interconnectivity
yes.
in just life, like in the world.
Yes.
And seeing it physically firsthand in a 15-foot bed, 12-foot bed?
Yeah, 15-foot
bed.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that connectivity, that interplanting working correctly.
Yeah.
And you're able to apply those to your mental status and see it too.
Yes. I think it's even just the idea of like the regeneration. There's a podcast that's all about regenerative agriculture podcast, and John Kempf is the dude that does that, and he's always says this thing is like about regenerating everything, right? It's like about regenerative agriculture. It's about regenerating people. It's about regenerating health. It's about regenerating economy. All these things, right?
It's not just about the soil.
It's not just about the soil. It's not just about the plant or the food. It's about all of those things, and it's so holistic.
Yeah.
In my experience, like when with this tiny plot, it's been so many things. It's been 5-gallon buckets on pallets. And then I learned something, and somebody changed my perspective, and I was like, I need to dump a bunch of wood chips and stuff down here, and so I did that. And then I poured, and I got compost, and I made sure it was decent compost from a decent place, and I built those beds on top, and then you can see the leaves as mulch. And prior to that, the point is, it's been building, right?
Yeah.
And as I get more information, I'm able to do something more valuable for my soil. It produces a happier plant. These weren't fertilized, and like they're growing. They're small, and I'm getting into a regular routine of compost tea. What's important to me and why, and my understanding has changed literally week to week with more information, ingesting more books and talking.
I was going to ask you, where are you getting your resources?
Yeah, that podcast is like, I feel so fortunate. I was so not a farmer. I had nothing to unlearn.
That's a good point.
It only makes sense to me. Like the things that I hear about utilizing and how they interact with plants and how they interact in soil, and now with new information that they are like inside plants and outside plants, and like all these things, like, and I was also fortunate that I wanted to be a biologist. So when I went to school at 18, I went to college, I was like, I'm going to go for biology. And I did a lot of classes, but couldn't pass calculus because I was drunk. And I was like, I'm switching my major. So the information's like not totally crazy. It's not far out, right? I know what
You've already got the basics.
Yes.
You know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
100%. I know when he's talking about cell wall and a nuclei, I know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So that was it's a huge benefit.
That's a good point, and I like what you said, that because you're so new, you didn't have anything to unlearn. You don't have generations behind you of doing things a certain way and then having to change what you're doing because of new information that's coming out.
Yeah.
But do you think that that also could still happen as you're learning things about the microbes and soil biology and all of that, and then they come out with new information? Are you able to just add that and change what you've been doing? Are you still doing your own personal trial and errors before you start switching from what other people are saying?
I had so little as far as like what's the right thing to do, right? Like I knew I visited a couple more farms that weren't the farm that I was working for, and I saw that they were doing roughly the same things, which was cool because they're good farms, and they were growing cover crops, and they were cutting them down, and they were tarping and breaking it down and putting compost. And then I got an ideology about tarping and all these things, and I'm like, you don't ever need to do that. And they're like, yes, we do, because we run a farm that does X, Y, and Z. And I didn't even understand that. Systems are systems for a reason, and people are doing their best within systems almost always.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's really, really hard for me personally, to not get overly excited about microbes when I talk to any farmer, because I'm like, it is everything. It, like, you will make your money because of this. It's hard for me not to get passionate, but I have zero experience. So like, I have 2 years of growing experience, plus of just a bunch of regurgitated John Kempf book, and teaming with microbes, teaming with bacteria. I had so little to go by that I'm just like kind of trying to do what I'm hearing, I guess, if that makes sense. Like,
and apply it where you think it needs applied.
Where it makes sense.
Yeah.
Or based on what we're doing. Like I know I can grow some pretty decent brassicas, and I can grow really good tomatoes, and for here, peppers all day long.
Which we've talked about off camera, that your peppers aren't really supposed to be here anymore. They're just not dying.
Yes, exactly. Like, these guys were supposed to be cut down over a month and a half ago. So I took the stakes out and they started falling over, but they didn't stop producing peppers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so they're great. So I want to be no-till. Like I love the idea of that. But not even, and I got behind the ideology for about 6 months of like, nothing will be disturbed. Like, I'm going to try to disturb as little as humanly possible. And then I like kind of heard a couple other perspectives, and it's like, even the perspective of the vegetables that we eat today are a product of disrupted soils, right? We are familiar with vegetables that, and our palates now crave these vegetables that are a product of disturbed soils, essentially. And so, and I'm like, whoa, that's kind of far out. And so I'm like, is that how far does that go? And that just makes me think. And so but what it did for me personally is freed me up to feel like it was okay to disturb it a little bit, to plant some radishes. Yeah. Like,
yeah, that's a good point. Where you're like, I don't want to plant anything because I don't want to disturb it. But at the same time, you're like, well, we got to put it in the ground.
I'm like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
I don't have like I've never been to a farm. Roughly, I don't know other people that are doing these cutting edge things, or basically I can't even see what it looks like. I'm guessing, but guessing has worked. Like I mean, if like really pretty simple ideologies of like again, we've never sprayed pesticides or herbicides,
right?
And the ecology that has come to our tiny little house because of that, like every kind of bird, every kind of bug, every kind of bee that comes in Florida that you don't see them around.
You don't see them across the street, but you see them right here.
100%.
That's really cool.
Every kind of bee, and it's cool because it wasn't like that. It was like just the big fat boys, which are like the native ones, and then the honeybees, and then like through letting Biden alba get the size of a tree, and then cutting it down and letting random weeds grow, but still maintaining a garden, and like trying to just basically not deter anything, and like put down lots of mulch and put down lots of compost and stuff. It progressively you're like, whoa, it's the shiny little green bees, and you're like, oh, I've never seen those here or around here, and that's really cool, because we did nothing to promote them, except continue growing our garden and really doing it for agricultural purposes, like, because I'm just now learning that
Right.
that there's like a big ideology, or it's like, what is the purpose that you're trying to serve? We interact and stuff, and we always were like really cool with each other and neighborly, like, hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? When we started the garden, the one dude, the younger guy, this is probably closer to my age, it was like, what is this? And I was like, dude, it's okra. And he's like, this is okra. I have goosebumps talking about this because he was so stoked on the okra that to this day, it is like probably my favorite thing to grow is okra, because people are just like, what? It grow? How does it grow? And it's such a thing in the South. You know, everybody eats okra, or it's a Southern food.
But when they get it, it's already been harvested, or
100%.
it's already been fried.
Yeah.
So
100%.
they don't even see what it looks like on the plant,
Yes.
let alone what it looks like pre-prepared.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Even like whole okra.
Yeah.
Will be two people. Some people, like, they'll be like, what is that? And they're like, it's okra. And it's like, that is so and that just like those experiences over time are like the reason that I love this, and the reason I'm like so completely certain that this is like what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. But it's also like the thing is painted the picture of like, we don't know. I didn't either. Like, I'm a farmer in my community. That's like, people know me as the farmer guy, right? Like, I wasn't a farmer or had been on a farm in 2 years. So it's like kind of crazy that there's so much room to learn and change and share. And like, you think of like government policy and the framework of the food system, and just like even how those things could change so much for our business. Like the farm business is like fun because we're working for ourselves and all that, but it's also been a huge learning curve for us. And
have you ever worked for yourself?
No.
Before?
Nope. And I've been in management positions or whatever and understood some of the stuff, but I had no idea all the ins and everything that was going to be necessary to be like a business owner. And
like what? Just like the management of your business, like doing your taxes and tracking expenses and things?
I think I expected that.
Okay.
But I think the stuff that I didn't expect is just like, I don't know. It was the realization that you just absolutely do every single thing. You know what I mean? Like, nothing occurs unless you're doing it. And like,
isn't that something?
Yes. And it was like, that was like really, I didn't expect to figure that out. I thought I would just know that, and I didn't know that and I was like, good grief, like what's going on with this? What's that? And it's just you. And you're just like, I'm the one that didn't do the thing. And the
ownership and accountability that takes.
Yes, but it's also like been like the most growth, like individually. It's like allowed me to see other aspects of my life and be like, am I passing the buck here, or is this something, you know? And that ultimately is where we were talking about mental health earlier, like the resilience. I don't know, like the being able to process, like, plants die even. Like, plants die and you're...
Oh, I didn't even think of that. The emotional turmoil that comes with the fact that, I mean, you think about it being in livestock and how hard it is. But with plants, it's just as hard. You worked hard to do this. You wanted to give this thing life. It died.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Absolutely. It's changed.
What was the first time? How did that go?
I would say largely it was expected, right? But it was kind of shocking how invested.
For a lowly old plant.
Yes, 100%. But it's like so many things, because it's like, I ultimately created the seed was in a packet, right, or whatever, and like it's up to me. I'm truly like, I gotta make sure this tray of however many seeds they're all in the right spot, and that they're all in the right amount of light and temperature and whatever. And so I'm gonna set this thing up. I'm setting something else up to succeed. And like, I think that first time, I don't know if I can recall truly I do remember a specific instance, and It was when I first built a crappy little plastic greenhouse.
Okay.
And I put that was another iteration of the front yard. It was in the middle of the front yard.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, create shade and everything else. But figured that out, and so like built it and moved all the seedlings into it because I was excited. But I finished it at night. It was like July.
Oh no.
And I moved them all in there that night, and I watered them even in the morning, but it was zip closed. The windows were closed. It was like 100 degrees, 105 degrees. So I got within the, 6 hours I was gone, and it got back. It killed every single baby was dead. And it was like shocking, but it really was. It wasn't like I didn't personally experience a ton of negative emotions. It was just like that can happen feeling. Mm-hmm. And like
I messed up.
Yeah. And like this, and it just honestly, it illuminated how much attention I need to be paying, and because it was early on, and I had good luck, I think, a lot when I was first trying to grow stuff. Then I started experiencing bad conditions and not ideal situations, and was like, I'm not paying nearly enough attention. I'm not tuned in at the level I need to be. And I think that is another huge blessing that I've had and we've had for our farm and our business. It's like I can see even at Eartha's, it's a 10-acre property. It's about 2 acres being farmed. There's lots of volunteers, and it's just really hard to stay in tune with everything, every aspect of those fields. Like, and there's a lot more happening in those two. Like, there's 2 acres of farm area, but then there's an apiary. There's like this permaculture area. There's all these different zones, and I've been experiencing. I'm still go there regularly, but even while I was working there, like I would not see a zone for a week and be like, wow, this is totally different than it was, right? And all those experiences, but like,
you're saying that there's so much going on that it's hard for one person to really stay in tune?
Yes. And that farm operates like it now has people and now has staff, but when I worked there as a assistant farmer, it was the director the farm manager who was also acting as the director, and then the lead farmer / farm manager also, who was doing basically everything on those 2 acres, wrangling volunteers and doing like.
So there was a lot going on.
Tons.
It was hard to pay attention to one specific spot. So you found more success on your little area where you're focusing on just your vegetation.
100%. What I guess the bigger picture was like that. I can only imagine that being more so if the space was bigger, right?
Yeah.
And if I had maybe really researched a ton and continued working my day job and Chandra her career, and we saved up money, we got a loan, and we had purchased acreage. For instance, like, 5. Now, right now, the dream farm size is 5 acres. It's like,
you can do a lot on 5 acres, though. I mean,
I'm just like, I'm obsessed with this like dream farm with like 4 1-acre things, and animals, and they move and they graze and cover, and I'm obsessed with, like, that's the current obsession, but I guarantee you that will change.
Yeah.
And like, I would have if I had been given 5 acres for free and someone was like, farm this, I would have lost our farm. I would have lost all our money. I would have totally, in our situation, I feel like I would have misappropriated every last bit because I didn't understand where I needed to be focused, I think.
So starting out so small has given you the ability to hyper focus on certain things, get those right.
Yes.
Before you go do something bigger.
I think helped me grow exponentially as a grower, or rapidly at least.
Yeah.
Rapidly.
Yeah.
Opposed to like, if I had jumped on a tractor with 5 acres and started throwing down compost, like even if I was doing it organically and I understood to be regeneratively, I don't think I would have done a good job, and I still don't think I would have the understanding that I have, which is really the value that I feel that we've got. Financially right now, it's figuring it out.
Yeah.
But it feels like we're set up to to have a year where we could hopefully take care of some of that stuff and then maybe get ahead of it. You know? Yeah. And so it feels right, and it feels like it happened this way, so I didn't do, and so something bad didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, and it's only been good stuff. It's really just hard to put into words all the many ways that like I've got to grow personally, learn about like business, learn about growing, learn about nature. Like it's an obsession, like, but it's not, I doesn't feel unhealthy like anything else I've ever been obsessed about, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like if I'm not paying attention, if I'm not reading, or if I'm not putting my hands on a plant, I'm gonna die. It's not like that. It's just like this sense of peace that I'm starting to experience readily, like, or regularly, I guess, that comes with, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna try to tend these plants, right? I'm gonna do my farm stuff. I'm gonna talk to some people in the business world, whatever that is. I don't know. I'm a horrible business person. Getting better, but like that stuff is. But communicate out there. It's like, without making it too grand again, it feels like the reason, like a purpose, like a real purpose. Like, the business is cool, but that's one aspect. The eating good food is awesome, but that's one aspect. The going out and being physical in the fields and manhandling stuff, because I need that as part of my life, that's awesome. Like, it's the talking to someone struggling in their own life and just talking about life while weeding is huge. Like, those things all fill my cup or give me purpose. And it's like, no, I wouldn't say any one condition or one variable, one aspect, like, is the most valuable. I don't, or at least for me, I don't know. It would be impossible for me to try to be like, that's the reason I do this, because it feels so linked into everything. You know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So to finish up, I just am curious. So you sell your products to the farmers market, you volunteer at another farm, but do you still do anything for the rehab facility? Do you help with that community at all?
So I do not work at Gateway anymore. I am interested in starting another farm that actually focuses on that. Okay. Like, literally trains people coming out of rehab that are going to be in like long-term housing to get training to either become a farmer or do culinary, and then have that like coincide with treatment goals, and then try to get a lot of people excited about it, and then sell that food to the houses. Yeah. Because that would be awesome. Yes, and because those people are interested, as one of those people, and it gives you purpose, like you just said. Yeah. Being able to focus on something, have a purpose, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like you're going to die if you don't touch a plant. Yes. But you still want to go touch that plant really badly. Yeah. Yes. Like, yes. There's just I can feel it with you, that how that feels and how that's different. Yeah. And how important that is. So if you're able to get that going, or maybe if somebody's watching this and they also have an idea with maybe some funds. Yes. To help you out with that, I think that would be so beneficial for your community and just your experience and your background. And I think that you're modest when you say you don't know a lot, because when you are doing this day in and day out, you absorb information so quickly, even though you haven't been doing it for generations or 10 years or whatever. I wouldn't put a timeline on knowledge. I think knowledge is knowledge. If there is anybody out there watching this video that might be maybe in your position, that might be struggling with addiction or something else, and they feel like maybe they don't have a purpose, or maybe they do have a purpose in plants, what would be your advice to them? I would say do your best to not feel anxious, not feel stressed out by going and talking to the people that know about this stuff. Because in my experience, the people, the growers around here, the people that are invested in agriculture and best practices are so freely giving of their time. They want to share this information. they want everyone to actualizing this better version of health for themselves as much as like they are. I know it's scary when I knew nobody, and I went to Earth's Farm and Market, formerly Whitehurst Farms, and I met Sarah, and I talked to her for 2 hours, and she is one of my best friends in the world now. That interaction was not one of a kind. There were been countless interactions like that, and those interactions are the only reason I'm able to say I have a farm, that I'm a farmer, that I care about this stuff like I do. It's other people showing me like what other people showed them, and which was been, and when it comes to like addiction itself, that a therapist can tell me a million times not to do drugs, and I'll be like, that's great, but have you ever been on drugs? Like, you know what I mean? And like, but the dude that's been on drugs is gonna get through to me a little bit different.
Yeah.
And that's that same effect is so with agriculture or growing or food, all of those things. Talking to other people is the only reason I was able to learn. And so I would try to get into the community, find the people that you look at and you're like, dude, I don't know what that person's got going on, but I want a piece of it. I want some of that for myself, and then go talk to them. And if you do, I guarantee you those people will be cool.
Because it can feel intimidating.
Yes.
And it can feel like, oh, nobody wants to hear from me. But the reality is that's the furthest thing from the truth.
The exact opposite.
Yeah.
Truthfully.
I would agree. I would agree.
I think, at least for me personally, when I'm like, I think this was just like a product of me not having a ton of information up front.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted to talk. I'm like, what do you want to eat? What do you expect to see? What do you want to see? And people are like, not afraid to tell you, you know, they're like, I want freaking green beans, dude. Like
I love me some green beans.
You're not growing green beans. And like, you're like, okay, damn, I gotta find green beans now. Like, and like, that's but that's as fun as any other part too. Is like talk. It's just the talk. I could talk about it as much as I could do it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think that it's so healthy for you. I can see it, that talking it through, being open is important to you, and it works in your brain. So thank you so much for letting me come out here and talking and just showing me around. I know it's winter time, so there's not a lot to see, but you know, telling your story and hearing more about you, I love that you call yourself a farmer, and I would consider you a farmer, but I think too many people in the urban are like, well, I'm an urban farmer. I'm like, no.
It took a while.
You are growing food. You are feeding your community. You are a farmer, and that's that. I don't care what your acreage size is. I don't care how much money you make.
Thank you. That's appreciated, truly. That is absolutely a hang up that both me and Chandra have experienced, and up until recently, like literally October, we left our careers and we're like, we're doing this, and now it's like, I guess I feel okay now. I guess I can call myself a farmer, but really it's still very strange. And so that's a really huge thank you.
I love it. I cannot wait to see where you go in the future. So we will be following along with you.
Thank you so much.
And if anybody wants to see more about you, go to your website, buy things from you, go to the farmer's market. We'll put all those links in the description.
Absolutely.
And they can check those out. So thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.